Okay, can you hear me now? Liam's giving me a thumbs up. I hope I fixed it. That's good. Okay, I'm just going to wait for someone in the comments to say we can hear you now. Thanks everybody for letting me know that you couldn't hear me, and for Liam popping into the stream very quickly and helping me fix it. Thank you, Liam. All right, great. We have a shaking of the fist like we're all heroes. I feel like I am a little bit of a hero right now. I'm going to start over. I tell you why I feel like a hero. It's been quite a week. I have had a lot of tech issues this week. And probably one of the reasons that you couldn't hear me and my configurations were off was because my computer completely crashed and I had to start completely over again. And I mean, like, brand new system, completely had to reset up everything. And that, folks, is a huge amount of time and a big pain. It's been a challenging week for me in the tech world. But we're here now and it's fine and it's okay. So it's Friday and we have a lot of things to talk about, and we've been doing family history all week, and I hope that all of you have had a really good week. And I hope that you've been able to do a little research and make some progress, and I hope that you will tell us about it if that is the case. So with that in mind, thank you everybody for joining, and thank you for your comments. We have all of our usual players, which is really great. Gina and Daphne and Andrea and Rosie and Gina. Did I already say that? And Robin. And Andrew's with us today. Karen is with us. Lori and Daniel. It's fantastic. Thank you. Jan, that's great. This is so true, Andrew. You only find out about the value backups after you've lost something. That is so true. I will admit there was a bit of a panic. I was like, oh, all my stuff. Oh no. Thankfully it was all backed up. So that's really good. Oh, this is great. Karen wants everybody to know, if you're attending the Family History Show in Kimpton tomorrow, come and say hello. She'll be at the London, Westminster, and Middlesex Family History Society stall. First of all, please go to that show if you're able. Our societies do so much for us, and it's incredible to be able to go into an environment like that and talk to other family historians and be around people that share your passion. It's if you are able to attend events like that, please do. Secondly, Karen, thank you very much for volunteering and working the stall and talking to all of those people and sharing your expertise. And then third, I love that you have shared this with our community, right? Findmypast community every Friday is great, but it is so delightful when we can meet each other in person. So if this happens and you guys get a chance to meet, right, please take pictures and share them with the group because we love to see it. That's amazing. I love it. All right, we are going to talk about all sorts of things today on the Family History Expert Hour. But we're going to start with our usual stuff like new records and newspapers. But first, let's share the question of the week. I hope this one gets your brain moving. Our question today is, if you could see how your ancestors voted in the past, what election or issue would you most like to know about? This is very much an opinion question. And I think in today's political climate, without saying too much, there's a lot of things that I think are on people's minds. And how would our ancestors have voted or represented themselves, or what issues would have concerned them most in their communities, on a local level, a county level, a national level? I think this is a really interesting question. And I haven't yet totally made up my mind as to what I would want to know about yet. But there's a couple, I have like some things swirling. So please do that. And let us know what your thoughts are. I think it's a really interesting way to dialogue with each other and engage with each other in the comments. So please share. So in the meantime, of course, we're going to talk about new records, and then we're going to go into today's topic, which is poll books. So let me get my screen up so that I can do that. And we're gonna go into the right mode. There we go. Okay, so today's topic is about poll books, but we're gonna of course get to that in a minute. There's that question of the week again for you. If you could see how your ancestors voted in the past, what election or issue would you most like to know about? Um, what would you ask them? Which I think is a really interesting question. But before we do that, let's talk about our new records and new newspapers. Of course, we go a couple of weeks without doing these updates now, so there's new records every week, and you can always find them on the Find My Past blog. This is just a few of them from the last couple of weeks that I thought were interesting. So the coroner's inquest records from Suffolk. Look at the year range though, 1767 to 1921. Middlesex baptisms added a bunch of new baptism records. Again, giant year span, couple hundred years there. The Greater London Burial Index got some updates. The Court of London Wills Index got some updates. We added material to the Scottish Roman Catholic collection for parish marriages, baptisms, and Catholic directories, which is great. The directories are the big one, running from 1829 to 2016 with 63,000 entries. But the one that I thought was like really, really delightful and fun is the records from Edge Hill University. So these are student records. This is a brand new collection. They've never been digitized before, as far as if I remember right. It's 14,000, just almost 15,000 records, running from 1885 to 1947. Edge Hill, of course, being a really fascinating institution in and of itself, but their records are amazing. So I wanted to show you a couple of these. And I just realized that in this mode, I can't see my notes, so I'm a little unhappy because I had some details about Edge Hill, but now I can't share them. Look at the couple examples that we have. Of course, Edge Hill being the first kind of women's college, specifically women's college that opened. Some of the earlier records are, of course, like copies and transcriptions made later. The typed image that you're looking at is from 1885 to 86, and it's got the list of students. And then married names, right? So right at the very top, Ames Margaret actually becomes Mrs. Rollins in 1896, which is fantastic, right? So, I mean, gosh, what a source. I mean, just from there's obviously that perspective of like genealogical information. Okay, we know her maiden name now, and we know her married name, and we know when that happens. We know her address, right, in the second column. But also, we know that she attended this women's college, and there's a possibility of other records. There's in many cases there are multiple records per person in the collection because there's all sorts of things, or grades, and all that. So well worth looking at, well worth taking some time on this particular collection. The second record, kind of in the background, the index card, is from much later, 1924 to 26, from a woman named Frances Rose Lawrence. So we've got an address. Actually, we've got a couple. We've got what she did, right? She went to high school. She's a student teacher. We've got the subjects that she worked on, and then her grades. She was a B average student, right? Needlework, a B minus. I just think these records are amazing. I think it's incredible to be able to access documentation for women in this period, and specifically women who were at the kind of the university age. This is like just a super exciting record set for us, and I hope that you guys all enjoy it. I hope that you dig in and start playing around because these are really cool. Okay, let's go to newspapers. A bunch of course, again. Oh, and I'm sorry, I never finished this slide. Oh, so a lot of new newspapers, of course, in the last couple of weeks. Again, we publish every week. Just some highlights, some fun ones. The Whiskey Trade Review, devoted to the Irish whiskey trade. We've got a lot of satire coming out in the last couple of weeks. Lots of gossip, which is just great. The Southern News, where Michael Collins was a shareholder for the paper, apparently the most popular in County Cork. We've also got a number of titles coming out because of the 200th anniversary of the modern railway, of course, which just passed. So the Railway Press and the Railway Servants' Chariot and Companion and the Scottish Railway Gazette. So all sorts of fun titles for us to play around with and explore. And I'm going to just take a second to see if I can fix my slides because I want to be able to do this better. So give me just a second. In the meantime, we're going to talk about some of these questions of the week. Oh, yeah. Okay. So Karen saying the vote in World War II would be interesting for sure. Jillian, most of my Scottish ancestors were either Tory or Labour voters. Welsh ancestors were Labour. And Ellen would be curious to see if my ancestors voted for Abraham Lincoln in 1860. Oh, that's a really good one. Mm, that's very interesting, Ellen. Um, um, Red Hen over on YouTube saying the women's right to vote. I totally agree. That was one that very much popped into my mind too. Um, I think those issues are really interesting to me to know. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Let me see if I can make this work a little bit better for me. And I'm so sorry for all of the issues today. Um, uh, it has not been. It's been. Can we do it that way? Let's see. I think that's what I want. Let me try this really quick. Uh, it's not going to show me my notes. Okay. Um, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna just trust that you guys are okay with seeing the back end of PowerPoint slides, really. I think you're more interested in the information than you are in making sure that it looks like super polished. So we're just gonna do this. All right. Again, um, I could probably do better next time. I'll try to do better next time. Let's see if we can get, there we go, get that at least to disappear. All right. So let's talk about poll books. Let's talk about how our ancestors actually functioned in kind of the government, the process of governing before most of the reforms came out, right? So poll books are a much earlier period than we typically talk about on these sessions. Um, and Robin actually asking the perfect question: can I find out how my ancestors voted? Well, the answer is, Robin, it depends. It depends on the time period, and it depends on the issue at hand, and it depends on all sorts of a variety of different scenarios. So, um, what we're going to look at today is these poll books that date back pretty far. Um, and keep in mind that this is all, again, before most of the more modern reforms that gave the majority of the population the right to vote, right? So we're talking about men and women, and we're talking about a number of local issues, but also voting for parliament. So let's see. Can I just I've zoomed in so much that I can't find any of the controls. Oh my gosh, what a week. This is insane. Okay. Bear with. Sorry, guys. Wow. I'm really, there we go. All right. So we're just going to leave it like that. Again, it's not as pretty. I'm sorry. We'll try to get that fixed. Okay. So there are poll books and there are electoral registers, right? And so let's define the difference between the two for just to make sure we're all on the same page. So poll books are basically the earlier version of electoral registers in a sense. Poll books are before votes were secret. So the idea here is that you're recording every individual vote that occurs that happens in a vote by name because they're not anonymous, right? They are this is public information. And it lists the people who voted, right? So if you didn't show up to vote that day, then you didn't get your name in the poll book. It shows the names of the voters. It's supposed to show who they voted for. It occasionally adds information like the voter's place of residence, their occupation, and the place of the voter's occupation if different from the residence. So if they are voting in a town or a village vote, but they actually live because they work there, they're legally authorized to vote in that location for some reason. They had to qualify, right? Um, but they actually live somewhere else, then it would record both locations in some cases. The last known publication of poll books is 1882 for Cambridge for the college. And then as researchers, we want to look for county specific collections for poll books. Electoral registers, on the other hand, list everybody who were eligible to vote in a specific year if an election was called, right? So electoral registers quite different in that they list everybody eligible versus poll books who only list people who actively voted. They generally give more information on voting qualifications than poll books do. Poll books are published and produced in a period of time where your qualifications were just kind of assumed because, to be honest, there were so few people who were qualified to vote in this period that they didn't really have to write that down, right? There's very few ways that you would be qualified to vote. Electoral registers come from a period in which more people were qualified, more people were legally allowed. So as we start to kind of dig into poll books, let's talk about the history because there's a lot of history here. Um, the Act of 1696 requires the sheriff at county elections to record names and how he polled, how he voted. So that's the creation, the start of documenting county elections and votes. Lists were not intended to be kept indefinitely, but were really for handling disputes. So it was really like, I got more votes than Joe did. And they would go to the poll books and go, we counted them again. And here you can see the evidence. And actually, no, you didn't. In 1832, compulsory production of a printed electoral register becomes law. So that almost entirely ends the need for poll books, but they kind of filter on for a little while. In 1843, there's an act that orders the deposit of all future polls, county and borough, in the Crown Office. Okay, so this is the part of documentation that's really important to us as researchers. In 1872, the secret ballot ends. So they stop recording and publishing individual votes. And that's when it becomes more fair and equal, obviously, I think in a modern perspective, how we would view it, but also ends the listing of individual names, right? Which for us is important. The university seats were exempt from this, and lists of their voters were printed at Oxford through 1878, in London through 1880, and then at Cambridge through 1882, like we already mentioned. So at the end of the 19th century, poll books are basically phasing out because there's no recording of individual votes anymore. Electoral registers are increasing. And the material, right, that all of these books are sitting around. So the end of the 19th century, the collection is offered to the British Museum and the Public Record Office. Both of them decline the collection. They say no thanks. This is a collection of records dating from 1843 to 1870. It's a huge amount of material from all across the country. In 1896, there's a committee of inspecting officers that go through the collection and they actually recommend preservation. The Public Record Office failed to collect. They just didn't show up with the truck, right? And in 1907, the collection of books was destroyed. So it's very sad news for all of us who do research because all of that precious information was lost. So what are we really talking about here? We're talking about 2,000 books altogether. They listed the voters in about a third of all contested elections between 1702 and 1872. They were more frequent in the 19th century, and they exist for about half the elections between 1830 and 1872. The earliest, of course, is that for Essex that was mentioned previously, and the last, except for the universities, is for the by-election of Bedfordshire in June of 1872. So we have this huge, massive collection, 2,000 books that were printed with voters from 1702 to 1872, and essentially in 1907, the entire collection is destroyed. In some cases, rival printers would issue the same list. So the official version that got sent into the Crown Office had kind of essentially a copy. Some were originally also published in newspapers and then reprinted as pamphlets. And you think about it like election night in a modern sense, right? The election is happening, it's all going on, and the newspapers are publishing information. So the next morning they're like, here's the initial early results of the election. And so you would find that in the newspapers. And then after the official votes and the tallies, then they would republish it as a pamphlet or as another article in the paper. And then the official poll books would be published with the official count. And of course, publishing the book took longer than it did to publish the paper. When you're looking in newspapers, especially for early results of elections, phonetic spellings are really common because they're printed in such a rush, right? So they're not doing a lot of fact checking on the spelling of names. They're just publishing the results as best they can. Okay, in the poll books, and I think I can actually do, well, yeah, I'll leave it like this, sorry. Okay, so in the poll books themselves, there are a huge amount of abbreviations that are used. Now, I just told you that the collection was destroyed, but obviously some of them do still exist. The vast majority have not been digitized. So this is research in your local county office, record office, and archives, and libraries and museums, those kind of things. But you need to understand what you're working with in order to make use of them. The poll books are filled with abbreviations. What you're looking at on the screen are some of the common ones, but you have to be aware that many poll books use different forms of this. Now, we've already talked about the idea that in order to vote, you had to qualify. These are the ways in which people qualified. So you owned a farm, or you had a vicarage, or you had a piece of property that had woods on it, or you had an orchard, right? So these are qualification abbreviations that are commonly used across most of the poll books. Not necessarily all. Again, you have to review each publication to understand what it's telling you, but these are some of the abbreviations that you're going to see across these registers. How do you access poll books, you ask? I'm sure you were all asking that because everybody wants to know how their ancestors voted. There are some online. So Find My Past Ancestry, Society Genealogist, and Family Search. I should have had Family Search on this list. I'm not sure why I missed it. All have some materials online, but there are larger collections at Guildhall, Oxford, the Institute of Historical Research Wool Library, and then, of course, your local record and heritage offices. So if this is a period that you're interested in, and if this is something that you think is worth pursuing, which I would say that it is, then you're going to be going into doing some on-site research. Now, for online access, last time I checked, and I'll admit this information is probably a month or a couple months old, so they may have added to this, I don't know, but last time I checked, Family Search had these poll books available online or available in their collection. Some of them, as you can see, are on film still. So, we know they're digitizing quickly, and not everything is accessible just yet. But they've got records from Kent, they've got Cheshire, Plymouth, London, and Norfolk, in a variety of different components. So check the Family Search catalog to find out if they have the material and years for your area. Like you see the county level registers for Kent kind of span a number of different years, right? They've got 1734 and then they jump to 1790. But then the Kent Family History Society has the new printings 1734, 1754, and then 1790. So there's a variety of different years, and you really have to read through the card catalog to understand what you're getting, and to find the year and location that you're interested in. Find My Past also has a decently sized collection, so a number of poll books, but a smaller year range, right? Most of them run that same, well, they all are within the same decade of the 1830s. So not quite as much variety, but a better coverage across the country geographically during that one decade. So keep in mind, again, that when you're seeking these out, you're probably going to have to go through to a county record office. All right, what do these poll books look like? I'm gonna go up to bigger so you guys can see this now. And actually, let me just redo this really quick. Oh, oops, it didn't reset itself. Hang on. Let me see if I can get it to show. It's not going to do it now. I broke it. I just broke it. Okay, so we'll just keep it that way. The poll books themselves look like this. And hopefully it's not getting cut off, although I fear it might be. So let's open that up a little bit. All right. These are the intro pages. So this is a Norfolk particular copy, right? Eastern Division of the County of Norfolk. The poll or the vote is for 2 knights of the Shire. It's really important that you read these introductory pages. You get descriptions of each division, a review of why and how the election was called for, the process that the candidates went through, and then the tally of votes themselves. So I've pulled out over on the side, you can see about 11:30 on Monday, December 24, High Sheriff came into court and stated that the numbers, the results of the election are follows, right? So Mr. Wyndham wins with 3,300. I'm sorry, he's second place with 3,300. He did win. I can count. Major Keppel comes in second at 3,261. Mr. Peach got 2,900 votes, and Lord Henry Cholmondeley got 2,800 votes. So if you read those first couple of pages, they're typically not very long because it's typically a local election, and it's going to tell you again, like, this is why we did this. This is why we even have this election today. It's a relatively short summary, but it's really important that you read those first couple of pages. Then when you get into it, you're going to see kind of the records as they exist, right? So on the first page, you typically get the headers and the introduction to the abbreviations, right? So in this one, you can see that the C stands for copy holder, the OC is occupier, the LE is leaseholder, and the rest are freeholders and annuitants. And then at the top of each column, you get the abbreviation of the name of the candidate. So they don't spell out Mr. Wyndham and Major Keppel and Mr. Peach. They use W for Wyndham and P for Peach and K for Keppel, etc. So all of this information is necessary to understand the record that you're looking at. And then you can work your way into the book and actually get by 100 how people vote. Now, this one is actually not properly filled out because it's supposed to actually say how each individual person voted. But in this case, it does give you a summary or tally of the 4 candidates and how many votes they received per village, right? So on the second, like the right-hand side, you can see that in Burlington, North St. Andrew, they got 2 votes each, right? So there's only 4 people that voted. I don't that the math doesn't math there, but it's worth kind of looking into. Oh, sorry, it's underneath, not on top. So there's a number of details in here that you really need to understand as you work through the material to be able to see what your ancestor was involved. Now, keep in mind, of course, you've got individual names on this page, right? So you can do a name search across these records. In some cases, you're going to get more detail, and in some cases, you're going to get a little bit less. So when you combine this type of research with something like newspapers, how'd you guys know I was going to say that? You can actually pull together a bit of a story, right? So let's take a little bit of an example. We're going to look at one of these guys who ran for this election, George Keppel. He was actually Honorable General George Keppel, the 6th Earl of Albemarle. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, or anything worse close. He represented East Norfolk as a Whig from 1832 to 1835. He lost the elections in 37 and 41. From 47 to 50, he represented Lymington, and then he becomes the Earl in 1851 and Baron Ashford sorry, it got cut off. That's weird. 1851 as well. You're seeing all the editing tools because this is not working for me today. All right. So what happens in the election in 1832? The election is actually held the 22nd of December, 1832. So we need to make sure that we scour kind of newspaper content across that whole period. So both of these articles are right in that range, but the Weekly Dispatch here is from the 7th of January, 1833, because obviously they're still talking about this, right? So the Norwich Mercury first, 22nd of December, they are publishing one of those early accounts that I mentioned earlier, right? This is the first results of the election, right? This is breaking news kind of newspaper reporting. And they're saying Wyndham's on top. Sorry, let's see. Wyndham's got 23 votes, Peach has 30, Keppel has 24, and Cholmondeley has 28. In the latest account, right? 12:30. Like this is quite literally breaking news from a newspaper standpoint. So they're talking about the results of the election. And then, of course, a couple of days later, they come back and they do a full account of the entire election, all of the issues that's happening across the county. So right where that purple arrow is where our potential candidates are sitting, right? The members, and then they kind of announce the winner. So the members for this division are going to be Wyndham and Major Keppel, both are reformers. The opponents were Mr. Peach and Cholmondeley, both Tories. The poll at the close, and they give all the results based on the votes. So a total of 12,239 votes, and then how it all breaks apart. Major Keppel declared that he would support ministers and more especially support a complete reform of the church establishment and a communication of tithes. The most memorable feature of this election was the departure from political life of the great commoner of England, Mr. Coke. So that's something else to investigate and read about and think about. The reason we want to do this is because we can see where those votes went, right? The majority of the votes. And then we get little tidbits like Major Keppel's declaration. Well, that tells me that the issues of the day, essentially, tells me what was important to people in that area of the country in that time frame, right? He is saying, this is how I'm going to present myself. This is how I'm going to act on your behalf. Um, and and he ends up, kind of up in the top running, right? He ends up receiving the vote. So he gets elected into office. Now, there's a whole lot of backstory about how campaigns were run and how officials were elected and bribery and before reform was put in, and how they persuaded people to vote for them, and I use the word persuaded with kind of a wink and a nod. So there's a whole lot of history there that deserves to be understood. We don't quite have time for all of that today, but it does give you kind of this exploration of poll books and newspapers combined, gives you a sense of at least what was being discussed locally. And that, of course, impacts our ancestors, right? Because they were the people generally living in those places. So if we keep going in our newspaper exploration, we're looking for Major Keppel. He's down towards the bottom of this article. They're talking about the new Parliament, the House of Commons. This is from 22nd of December, 1832. And both Wyndham and Keppel, you can see down there for Norfolk, are referred to with a little asterisk as ministerialists. And that is meaning that they support the ministry that's already in office. They basically already support the party that's in power. So again, it's kind of giving us a sense of how the local residents voted, right? So they're, in theory, relatively happy with the way things are going, and they want to keep that party in government. In the Norfolk Chronicle, we're moving forward just 2 months here into February, and they're reporting on a speech in Parliament. And you can see here where it talks about the ministerialists, it's hard to say, where they kind of step up into the action in the speech, right? So Lord Ormley from Perth is actually talking, and he's referring to the long-term treatment of the Irish. And at some point, that speech gets a repetition of cheers from the ministerialists, meaning Keppel and his colleague are probably in that group saying, yeah, we support this particular vein of thinking, a line of thinking. So that again is kind of an implication to, if we read between the lines, we kind of assume that our ancestors are happy with how things are going, and so they support this level of government, they support these candidates, and thus what the candidates support in Parliament actually kind of it reflects back on what the people are thinking and how the people of that community understand and believe they want things to go. I hope all that made sense. My line of thinking there, you're kind of connecting the dots, right? It's a progression of, this is my ancestor, this is who won the election for my ancestor's area, this is what he did in Parliament, and so in theory, my ancestor supports these activities in Parliament. Looking at just another quick example of going back to the poll book, and this one is more detailed. This is why I wanted to share this one, because it gives you a bit of kind of the range of, the one that we saw for Norfolk was kind of almost blank in many ways. This one is much more complete. So this is a Bedfordshire poll book from 1832. This is available on Findmypast. So you get the name and surname of each voter, their place of residence or abode, how and why they qualified to vote. So you get, the freehold land or house and land occupied by him as a tenant at a yearly rent of £50 or more. And then the name of the property or the name of the tenant at that particular residence, right? So there's a lot more information in some poll books versus others. So it's worth looking at a range of different poll books across kind of the lifespan of your ancestor. And if you have family in multiple counties or multiple hundreds, then it's worth looking at each to determine how they were printed. The last resource I want to share with you is adding to the discussion of abbreviations and kind of some further reading. Most record offices have information about their electoral registers and poll book collections available online. So this example from Norfolk actually gives you all the common abbreviations across the Norfolk collection, and it tells you, exactly what you're looking at. So it's a guide to abbreviations, but they also have a pretty considerable page about how to use electoral registers and poll books, how to find them, how to identify them, and how you might incorporate them into your family history research. So you need to go to the county you're looking for to look for specific resources for poll books. You're not necessarily going to find everything online. In fact, you won't find everything online. There are many, many poll book collections out in the world that have not been digitized, and I don't know if they ever will. But be aware that there's a whole opportunity here to understand about um, there's a whole opportunity here to understand about how our ancestors participated in government, but we have to go into the county record offices to find them. I got distracted because Kim left this comment. Wait, no, yeah, that one. Um, it's pronounced like the town, and then it's said as Chumley. And then Daphne chimed in as well. Chumley. That, guys, that is not an I can't. That's not an easy pronunciation at all. Where do you guys come up with this stuff? Okay, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. So that's my overview of poll books. It was quick and it was fast, but I hope, Robin, this helps answer your question. Can you find out how your ancestors voted? And again, the answer is it depends. But if you go earlier back in time, it becomes a little bit easier because there is no secret vote. But you also have to assume that your ancestors qualified to vote. So there's a lot of variables in this question. And so, yeah, so we're having, hopefully that discussion helped, and hopefully that gives you some ideas about what you might be able to look at, um, and and how um, and how we can explore this arena. I'm laughing because Liam here learning a lot, but my biggest takeaway will be the pronunciation of Chumley. Maybe mine too. Oh man, I don't know. That's funny. All right, so with all that in mind, I hope that some of you will go out and try to explore these records and get a sense of what your ancestors tried to vote for and what they didn't vote for. And again, it's a bit of a project, right? Because you're not just you're seeing who they voted for or who won in their area, and then you have to go in and research that politician to find out what issues were important to them and what they spoke on in Parliament, what they did, or if what they didn't do, right? Maybe kind of see it from the other side of the question as well. So we'll go back to our question of the week. If you could see how your ancestors voted in the past, what election or issue would you most like to know about? And I'm going to go back to the comments and see if there's anything else. But you guys have been kind of quiet this whole time. So I will scroll back up and see if there's any question of the week that we haven't already covered. Well, wait, we talked about Abraham Lincoln. A lot of people just kind of think like giving observations, right? Northern ancestors voted Labor. Southern England ones were Tory, says Kim. And then Daphne getting into the question about women's rights again. I would like to know how the political landscape changed once women gained the right to vote. Did they make independent choices? Did they simply vote as their husbands advised? That's a much more difficult question to answer because, of course, the votes are secret by this point. But I think you could probably do enough research around kind of the social history and the environment they lived in, the community lived in, and try to infer what their relationship might have been like, to kind of at least make an educated guess, I would think, Daphne. It's an interesting question, though. It's definitely one to consider, and one that anti-suffrage campaigners used repeatedly, right? It's like the husband is the vote for the household, and the couple should just discuss the issue together, and then he represents the household and cast the vote. Oh, this one's interesting. Lynn, kind of a little bit of a personal memory here. For the first election after I turned 19, my mother sat me down and said, it does not matter who you vote for as long as you vote, because our soldiers fought for our democracy. I think she was talking more about World War II. But it's a poignant reminder, isn't it? It is important to be a part of the process. I would agree with your mom. I love this. Ellen, when my daughter turned 18, it was a privilege to register to vote. Shook her hand and give her a hug. My daughter is 16, so we're getting close, and I will be having a similar moment. All right. I'm really excited, actually, about that. Okay, so Karen's saying I found a lot of info from poll books, but did not know that's what they were until you just told me. Yeah, poll books are one of those things where you really keep hitting my table and it's shaking the camera. Sorry. It's one of those things you really, really have to understand how the poll book is printed, and and all the abbreviations, because of course they're trying to cram a lot of data essentially into this book. Um, and Yeah, so yeah, really, really good information. Very valuable, but it is one that you have to take time to understand and learn, and how to figure out how to interpret them. Um, Robin coming in with a good question. Do we vote the same as our parents, our grandparents, or do we have our own views? That's an interesting genealogical question right there. I really like that one. Like your um social beliefs and viewpoints and political beliefs and viewpoints on a pedigree chart. That could be really interesting. That could be really cool. Robin, if you do this, if you figure this out, I hope that you'll share. Stephen saying there are newspaper reports that show the forming of parties which name the people there. Absolutely. I love this comment, Stephen. Thank you very much. Um, One of the things that I got interested in a couple of years ago is the Birmingham Political Union. And the reason I learned about it, and the reason I know about it, and the reason I have a book about it, is because there's a newspaper account that lists someone who I believe is my ancestor at one of their meetings. And for me, that was one of my first moments where I was like, oh, I can learn about politics. I can learn about my ancestors' politics. This is fantastic. And it's all because I took the time to read this one article that actually lists his name as at one of the, like, formation meetings for this particular organization. Um, yeah, I full 100% on Steven's comment right here. Scour the newspapers, because they, as much as we want to find records, right, like poll books and electoral registers, the more information we have about the current political climate and the situation for that region or the area or the country as a whole, that information is going to come from newspapers and from academic papers and from history authors, and the books and the research. So do this. Do this to understand the context. Um, so I love this. Thank you, Stephen. That's great. Oh, this is so cool, Karen. I voted for the first time on my 18th birthday. The people working in a polling station saying happy birthday to me after my dad proudly told them. That's cool. I really like that. That's really cool. All right. Kim saying kind of another issue to think about: women's rights and the people behind them, right? Like how would her ancestors have voted? My great grandma was there for the Match Girl strike in 1888. That's also a very cool historical moment. So definitely think about that, right? How oh man, you know what? If I could have a couple of hours like on a park bench with a couple of my ancestors and just talk, gosh, that would be amazing, right? It'd be so great. Understanding this and understanding the cultural landscape around our ancestors is so super important, and being able to kind of even just make an educated guess, right? Even just kind of go like, oh, like the local community was really prominently opposed or for this particular issue. I think it's really interesting, fascinating stuff. Um, the the other one that I was gonna use another example, and I'm thinking it's in my brain somewhere. Um, it's so on the spot. Let me think. Oh my gosh, I was gonna say something really insightful. I thought I was. Oh, um, I was working on. I remembered. I was working on this story, and I'm kind of in the background working on this suffrage campaigner and trying to understand her situation a bit better. And um, a lot of the resources that I found about her and her family talk about how her dad was strictly opposed to suffrage. But if you move forward in time a little bit past those sources that everybody loves to quote, you actually find both of them attending a suffrage parade in their town together. And the newspaper actually specifically names him and accompanied by his daughters. And to me, that is a moment of real connection, right? That to me represents like a daughter, and well, actually two sisters who are really passionate about this issue, and a father who is opposed. And at some point they start to come together because they attend this parade together. And it may have been like, dad, just come and check this out with us. Like, please just have an open mind. But it could have very well been, I've changed my mind completely and I support women's suffrage. So, and anywhere in between, right? And we probably never know the real answer to that. Um, But it it was just a real moment for me as a researcher being able to go like, wow, they found a way to come together on this political issue, and it was just it was just really nice. It was just really nice to read that and go, they connected somehow. So these adult daughters and their father actually managed to bridge that gap in some capacity enough that they would attend this event together. Um, so I think that kind of research is very cool, and those are the moments that actually make all of this kind of background and context and history worth knowing, because you know the struggle that they've been on, you know the journey they've kind of come on, and how divisive some of these political opinions can be, right? Not to infer too much. Okay. Um, I definitely don't want to get into modern politics. Okay. I think that covers us for the day. I appreciate your patience with all my technical issues at the start. Thank you very much. I hope that the poll book session was a little bit interesting for people and was advantageous. I'm going to go ahead and cut this before I have any more technical issues. But I am going to put this comment up on the screen really quick because we would like to know, are there any other records or topics that you would like to see a deep dive on? These kinds of sessions are pretty interesting for me. I get to learn putting them together. This is one that I've done before in other ways, and with other audiences, just pieces of this. But if there are pieces that you know, or materials that you would like us to see kind of this deep dive in kind of approach to, please let us know, and send us some comments either on social media, or an email is always welcome also. And of course, you can reach us at support@findmypast.com whenever you would like. And we do look forward to those comments, and we read all of your emails, and we try to respond as much as we can. So if you have suggestions, please do share them. We'd really, really like to see that. Oh, Stephen, you're hitting. Oh, it's like he knows. It's like he's reading my mind. Masons and friendly societies is one of my best pet topics. Okay, right. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'm going to write this down, Stephen. Let us know what you would like to see. And I hope you really have a good weekend and enjoy the Family History Show. If you're going, Karen says she's going tomorrow at Kempton Park. So um, and Karen, actually both Karens, I hope that you find each other and you're able to get a quick snapshot or something. Thank you very much again. And we will see you next time on Find My Past Live. I hope you guys have a great weekend.